So, Aaron, thanks for doing this with us. We really appreciate it. Before we jump in on social media, do you want to share a little bit about yourself and how you became the Aaron Novello that we all know here at EXP?
Yeah. So I started selling real estate in 2006. My first calendar year, I made a whopping $13,000.
Hey, congrats, man.
Yeah, man. So not something people would put you on a panel on, find out how you did that. Certainly not interested in a mastermind group on how you made below the poverty line. Yeah. And then I got access to some kind of accurate data, what this job actually is and where I should be stacking time. And from there, went on, did 17 deals next year, then 50, then 89, then 100, did over 100 deals a year, 10 years in a row, did 200 deals a year twice. I started a coaching company, Elite Coaching, over a decade ago, teaching agents how to list property in high volume, because 80% of the 2,000 transactions I participated in my career were on the listing side. And then I used to own part of an office from a company in red, and I sold it back. And in going on 3 years now, it's 2 years and 11 months, we've attracted 435 agents to EXP and the Elite Builders.
I'm curious, as you talk about this, the idea of creating that funnel, right, and bringing that kind of value to people. Can you give me an example of what that looks like in your world? How have you used those concepts in terms of constructing social media content?
Yeah,
like what works?
Yep. So there's two approaches, right? So the first is documentation. So meaning, I think a lot of people think that they have to create something and curate what it is that they're doing, when in fact, I think a lot of us do really cool things, just nobody knows about it, which is the problem. So at the beginning, when I first started, it was just like documenting what I was doing. So when I transitioned to EXP, I was still selling real estate for about 6 months. And what I would do is when I was on the phone and I'm getting ready to set an appointment, I would just have the mental awareness to flip the camera on and put it on speakerphone, to allow people to witness and watch, right, what it is that you're doing, and that you actually do have a proficiency or a competency, not from an ego perspective, but more like, hey, I'm doing this with the intention of trying to help you guys, trying to equip you with what you need to be able to do it likewise, right? So the way that we get to the content is I do any time that I'm speaking, I always have a videographer in the room. We take that long form and then chop it up into short form. Right. So we chop it up into the short form pieces that is like, hey, that catches their attention. Right. And then to get them to the long form. And then now what we've been doing is on YouTube, I read a really interesting stat and it showed up in my metrics. So 10% of all TV screen time now is on YouTube. TV screens, not phones, not tablets.
Yeah.
When I looked at my own metrics, 4% of everybody who watches my content is doing it on a TV screen. So now what we're starting to do to be intentional, I had somebody do an audit of the channel and they were like, hey, your content's really good, but you're basically like just doing a data dump. So you're not making it easy for people to find what they want. You need to prune what you're doing. Right. So the analogy would be like, let's say me and you are like, hey, let's watch a football game together. We turn on ESPN and they have bakery on. We'd be like, that's not what I came here for. So we started to prune the station. We delisted any videos that weren't specifically speaking to the avatar. But then we made playlists that make it easy to find, for people to find what they want. And then what we also did is put the videos that we already know that did really well in the playlist in descending order. So from the ones that got the most views to the least. And then we started to edit in a way that makes it easy for you to find what you want quickly. Because when we and you were watching podcasts, we're both busy, we're doing stuff. We're like, hey, I like Aaron, he's cool, but all I want to hear is when he talks about that. So you can edit in a way where I can go right to that and get what I want. And then what we did is we started to create, because if it's becoming TV, which it is, and I asked myself, what's the probability that'll continue? Well, if you have a young person in your house, I guarantee you they're on YouTube Shorts all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
So what I'm aware of is like, okay, what's the probability that that'll continue? Remember recognizing patterns? I'm like, well, that's probably going to continue. So then wouldn't it make sense for me to begin to edit content in the same way that TV does? So how does TV curate content? Well, on, let's say, Netflix, they have series, let's say that's that show Billions or something, like that's a series. Then they have seasons, and then they have episodes within the seasons. So what we just started doing is we said, okay, that makes logical sense. We're going to make it easy for people to find what they want. And then we're going to create a series.
Okay.
Just like they do in other places. So I said, hey, people come, we call it the Agent Roadmap series. People come to me all the time like, hey, I wish there was a roadmap how to get from this place to this place to this place. So cool. So the first season is the foundation from 0 to 25 transactions. And then there's episodes within that season. The next season is from 25 to 50 deals. And then there's episodes. And then from 50 to 100. And then there's episodes. Then you bump into the time problem. I was like, okay, here's how you solve for that time problem, right? So in other words, we're curating. Now we're starting to be like more intentional. At first, it was just like a hardcore data dump. We were posting 3 times a day, we still do 3 times a day short form, 7 days a week on all platforms.
Wow.
And 5 long form YouTube videos per week.
Wow. And that also explains too the number of people watching you. You are productive. I mean, you really are putting out a lot of content for folks.
Yeah, and now what we're doing is we're starting to like, okay, let's start to be really intentional about what we're doing. Right? Let's start to curate, let's start to make the channel like easy for people to find what they want. Let's start to, because previously, truthfully, as time progressed, it was a lot of just like documentation. But now, because of what we're doing and we're building and everything, like I have more time to actually like sit down and think about what I want to actually say versus just show up and do it. Right. So yeah, what I would suggest to agents is come up with like, understand you have to build that ecosystem of attention. You need short, medium, and long. You need to make story branding your Bible in terms of media production. If you look at a piece of content and you can't answer who's the hero, and if it's you need to not do it. You need to constantly be thinking about how can you position yourself as a guide to help people to solve their problems. And again, I have a coaching client in Massachusetts, and we were having this conversation. I'm like, hey, you could create a series on how to buy your first home in this geographic area, and there's episodes. Here's what you need to do. Here's how to buy your first investment property. Here's how to do this. Here's how to do new construction, right? Because you're giving consumers what they want to see, to gather all the data and information in preparation for making the decision. And because they've watched a lot of time with you, they perceive you to be a guide to help them solve their problems, and they will reach out to you when they're ready.
That's smart. I'm curious, how do you decide what the things are going to be, what the seasons, the series, the episodes, what's the decision point for you when you're creating content?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I really am constantly thinking to myself, like, what do agents need right now? And when we go from 6.5 million to 4 million transactions for 3 years in a row, despite what they're posting on Instagram and how they're hashtag thriving,
yeah,
I know they're having a hard time. So it's like, all right, what do they really need to know about? Well, they need to know about lead sources that have high densities of motivated sellers. That's what they need to know. They need to know about the creative side of things so they can provide more options and choices instead of just like enlist your home. That's what they need to know. They need to know about how to convert at higher levels because there's less opportunities. So they need to know that sales cycle and how to do that. So the way I make the decision is more like, hey, what am I hearing from people and what am I seeing that they actually need right now in order to make money right now?
Yeah. Well, and I find too, so you mentioned high density of motivated sellers. So mind immediately goes to expireds, FSBOs, people of that, of that ilk, or, could be others, but that's what they need to know. That's not always what they want to know. How do you, when you're creating content, how do you make it to where they want to watch that video?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think that there's some, there's a, like a pattern to follow, because it's not just the quality of the content, it's also making it easily digestible.
Okay.
So it's having to learn instead of like saying like, welcome back to the whatever thing. As soon as you hear that, you know what you do? Boop, I'm not paying attention.
Yeah.
Instead, if you were like, you mean to tell me, Aaron, you made $1 million using social media? Now you're going to pay attention. They're like, what? Or like, hey, here are the 10 things I would not do if I was doing social. Or here's the 3 mistakes I made that cost me $50,000 doing social media. Or here's why I paid somebody $25,000 to teach me media. Right? So now, like, I have to understand that now I'm in a game where I'm vying for people's attention. And you're in an ecosystem. If you look at the supply and demand, because that's what platforms are, supply and demand, where supply is like all of the content and demand is like the people that are consuming it. Well, we live in a time now where today there will be more posted on Instagram than ever in history. And tomorrow, it'll be the same. So now there's like this enormous supply. So the question is how do you like get somebody to pay attention? Well, one is I think it's quality, obviously. You can't still get around that. You still have to be saying something that's valuable to people. A lot of people try to take, in my opinion, the lazy route, which is to try to be entertaining or something like that. And like, okay, that might work for some people, but the problem is like, you're basically positioning yourself as the court gesture. And like, that's okay to some degree, but like, you're not really like being a guide to help people to solve their problems. It's more like, I'm just doing this to try to get you to look at me. And oh, by the way, I happen to sell real estate. So they go that route and they're always trying to figure out ways to hack it. But I think what I've learned is there is no hack. I mean, I had 42 episodes of a podcast with 200 subscribers on YouTube. Most people quit. But like, there was a component of I wasn't paying attention to thumbnails. I was saying welcome back every time. like I also was not, as the talent, making the content easily to be consumed, if that makes sense. So I think becoming a student of that, studying that, look at people like Alex Hermosi, look at people like, I think his name's Graham Stephan or Stephan Graham, one of those.
I know him.
Yeah. So look at how they open, look at how they present media, look at how they capture your attention at the beginning to get you to actually listen. But then the deal is then it has to be good. Like you also have to be saying something that's like valuable or useful to people. And then I would also suggest too is like authenticity is the best form of advertising. I think, I had a coaching client one time, you know what he said to me? He's like, hey, it took me like an hour to shoot one thing. I said, do you know why? He said, why? I said, because you're acting.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. And I like what you say about kind of hooking them. Our friend Rene Rodriguez talked about, he calls it, I think, HOPS, which is hook, objection, problem, solution, right? That's his formula for when he's creating content. So for you, I guess one of the questions I have is, 60,000 followers, that's amazing. How do you do that? Like, okay, so we talked about creating great content.
Yeah.
Now, how do we get people to pay attention to it?
Well, I think again, like so is your question, how do I keep hold that many people's attention, or why would somebody like that amount of people be interested in perhaps hearing what I have to say?
No, I guess I wonder how that happened. Was that did you go out and buy a bunch of paid traffic?
No, not at all. So, and that's what's interesting because everybody always goes to that conclusion. So it's this like volume over time thing. So here's my experience, okay, in anything that we want to accomplish in life. And this is a frame that I got from Alex Hermosi. He says, when we get into something, at first we have uninformed optimism. We're like, man, this is gonna be fantastic, dude. Look at Aaron. Look what he's doing. He's got all these spot. Like, this is great, man. I'm like, everybody's gonna know who I am. And I'm gonna make a bunch of money. Great. Then you start doing it, and then you get informed pessimism, where you're like, wow, this is way harder than I thought, man. Like trying to figure out this content calendar. Oh, I have to hire people to help me do the editing, chopping up, and posting. Like, oh, I have to invest in equipment because production matters because there's so much supply now that it makes a difference. And then you keep doing what you're doing. Let's say you keep doing it on the social graph, not on the interest graph, and nothing's happening. So then you reach what's called the valley of despair. And you start to say, well, you know what? Maybe this isn't for me. And by the way, whenever I hear people say that to me, like this media thing isn't to me, for me, what I hear them actually saying to me is I'm allergic to money. I'm refusing to learn something new. I'm allowing my insecurity, my fear of something new get in the way, right? So, but anyway, you reach this valley of despair and you have one of two paths to take. And 95% take the first one, which is where they say, well, I don't know, like maybe this isn't for me. I've seen this person or that person or Levi or Gogo. I see them doing something. Maybe I'll go try to do what they're doing. Mm-hmm. And then they relive that cycle for 6 to 12 months of their life for 20 years. The second path, which is much more difficult and less take it, is people get informed optimism. I know this is hard. If it's not, what I tell people all the time with this stuff, if it's not worth doing for a decade, it's not worth doing for a day. This is a long game. And you want to play long games because most people don't want to play them because they're too impatient.
Yeah.
So you want to play long games with long people, right? People are going to be around for a while. So you're like, okay, I know that this is hard, but I also know the payoff. So I am willing to stick to it and keep tinkering and keep learning and keep paying guides to teach me and keep, enhancing my understanding so I can execute at higher levels because I know in the long run it'll pay off. And that's really what was true for me. So like that happened. I'd been on platforms. Like if you looked at my platforms, if you scroll down 3 years ago, it's just pictures of that my wife posted of our children. I just ignored it. I wasn't paying attention to it at all. Like I was just like, whatever. I was the guy who used to make fun of media, which is hilarious because at EXPCon, they asked me to do a presentation on media. I'm like, this is hilarious to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where I'm the guy who used to rag on you for doing it. And now but that's a demonstration of like the most expensive thing you can own is a closed mind. Mine was wildly closed. But now that I opened my mind and I was willing to change my mind, like my whole life changed as a result. But anyway, I had, for probably the first 2 years, no meaningful attention. Then on Instagram, I had one post get 1 million views. I went from 20,000 to 40,000 in a month.
I got to ask, what was that post?
I don't even remember what it was. And I do remember what it was. And it wasn't even on something that like I would think that would make it happen. It was about utilizing when ChatGPT first came out, utilizing ChatGPT as a mechanism to give you ideas about like titles and thumbnails and this and that. And that went wildly viral. And I would have never thought that that's what would go viral.
Well, and this is my question to you. So in that long tail, which is where most of us are going to start, right? Most of us are not going to have a hit right off the bat.
Sure.
There's, depending upon the platform, there's different ways to get yourself in front of other people, right? One is people sharing your content. One is the algorithm saying, ooh, this is good, more people need to see it. When you look at your content, do you focus or try to attempt to focus on one or the other? And if so, how do you do that?
That's a really good question. Until now, I really don't. It's not like I might in the sense like, oh, that popped off short form, or I'll see one of those guys who are other influencers. They do a post about clear cooperation. I did a post about clear cooperation the moment that it came out. And like, oof, it got like 30,000 people watch it. You know what I mean? So like, I'll see those kind of trends and stuff. But as far as the long form stuff, I create it with the purpose and intention of giving people the absolute best that I know that works. Not only because I know it's worked, because I've applied it. So I find it interesting, and I mean this lovingly. A lot of people, because we all know that social's like a thing, so we put people on stages that don't actually make a lot of money from it. They might be like, I was on a platform once and somebody was like, yeah, just put the camera on. I looked at her, I'm like, you're a model. Like, does anybody look like you? Yeah. No. So like, that's not really going to help them that much. You know what I'm saying? So I think we all know that it's important, but there is a severe lack of strategy and intention like that I see happening. So yeah, like I don't like, at that like granular strategic level, and there may come a time where that happens, where we're like, AI's monitoring all the posts and saying like, yo, this worked, like, let's do that more. It's been more like, hey, what do I think? So an example, I just did a live stream before this call with my partner at EXP, Jose. And in the live stream, we talked ahead of time. I'm like, what do people need? He's like, the market's changing, inventory's going up. They need to know how to get price reductions because they haven't had to have that conversation in a while.
Yeah.
So we've spent an hour role-playing price reductions because most people teach mindset because they can't teach tactics. So I let that drive what I'm doing. And I heard that guy, Rick Rubin, one time say like, he's like this weird is an interesting word. He's an interesting character, right?
Quirky, very quirky.
Quirky, that's a better word, is quirky, less judgmental. He's quirky. And he said like, the purpose of art is like, you actually create it for yourself. And if other people like it, great. He said the purpose of commerce is to create something so other people like it. So like, I think that's very true. So yeah. I create it because like, it's coming really from a place of like, hey, what do I think like would really, really be helpful to you? And I know the same way I know the sky is blue and the grass is green, that it's true. Because not only have I applied it, but I've taught it to others, or I've, seen others apply it, and I know that it works. And I let that be like the main kind of North Star of how we're creating what we're creating.
All right. I know we're at time here. So thank you for doing this. This has been awesome. I really appreciate it. And how can people get in touch with you, Aaron?
Yeah, super easy. Just at Aaron Novello on all of those platforms. And I look forward to the opportunity to interact and perhaps be a guide and be of assistance in some way.